everyone for taking the time to join today. I know it is a busy period for most of you, but look, today's focus is on tips for franchises, specifically around things like KPI management, analysis, and reporting. Now, after working with hundreds actually of franchise groups over the years, one thing that I've consistently noticed is that the numbers themselves aren't usually the issue, right? There's plenty of data. You got sales data, cost data, customer counts, really all of it. The real challenge is knowing what matters to which stakeholders, how to track it consistently across locations, and how to present it in a way that is genuinely useful, whether that's for the head office, for the franchisees themselves, or for the board. And here's the kicker, right? If you don't solve for that, reports, they just tend to become noise. And leaders, they end up making gut calls instead of informed ones. So what we'll cover today are some of those best practices that I've seen work across different franchise groups, from quick service restaurants to professional services. And then how Fathom can help bring those practices into life. Now, about a year ago or so, I was actually working with a gym franchise that was struggling to get franchisees engaged, which I'm sure is something that a lot of you here today are familiar with. Head office would send out reports every month, but most of the franchisees barely even looked at them. And the risk to this franchise group was quite clear. They had disengaged franchisees, they had inconsistent performance across a lot of sites, and a growing frustration at the head office. What they then did was they introduced the benchmarking tool that you can see on the right here, just a small kind of tool that sits within Fathom. And for the first time, the franchisees could easily see how they stacked up against their peers. Things like revenue, member growth, and wage costs as a percentage of sales, for example. That visibility sparked something the group had never been able to create before. It was this idea of healthy competition. Now, instead of ignoring the numbers, underperforming gyms started reaching out to the top performers, asking, how are you doing this? And the top performers were actually quite happy to share that. It created this sense of accountability, collaboration, and a sort of collective drive to improve, almost like you have this leaderboard that everyone wants to climb on. And that small single change turned reporting from a head office chore into an actual network-wide motivator. And I thought that was a bit of an interesting one to start with. Now, look, just so you guys know who I am as well. My name is Stian Horn. I am the Customer Engagement Manager here at Fathom in APAC. And I've been with this company since 2021. You can see the image there. I had less here. It's grown out a little bit now, but it's the same guy. Now, my role is really about helping businesses get the most out of Fathom, right? From the early stages of implementation through to scaling across multiple locations. Franchises are actually now one of the fastest growing parts of our customer base. So I do actually spend a lot of time working directly with groups like yours. Over the years, I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't work, and where tools like Fathom can make the biggest difference. So I'm going to try today to not just make this about theory, right? It's really about sharing what I've seen in practice and hopefully give you a few ideas that you can take back to your own business as well. So here's a quick look at what we'll cover today. First, we'll talk about the problem, right? What makes franchise reporting so tricky in the first place? Then we'll dig into the challenge. How does issues play out day to day for both the head office, but also the franchisees? From there, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Sasha, who will show you how Fathom helps solve problems in practice. And finally, we'll wrap things up with a live Q&A. So if you do got questions along the way, like I said earlier, hang on to them or drop them into that Q&A box, and we'll cover those at the end. Now, I want to just throw a quick question to you guys as well. How confident are you that the metrics that you're tracking for your franchise are actually the ones that gives you the best insight? Now, when I ask this to franchise groups that I meet with, the answers are typically a bit mixed, right? Some say they feel super confident in their numbers, but most of them admit they're either tracking too much, drowning in data, or that they're just not tracking the right things. And that's really where a lot of these cracks start to show. Because if you're measuring the wrong metrics, or you're measuring them inconsistently across locations, it doesn't really matter how good the reports look, because the insights within the reports, they just don't stack up. Now, when the insights don't stack up, your best performing sites can't be learned from, and underperformers stay under the radar until it's too late. Look, when I talk to franchise groups, the problems are typically the same three things over and over. First, it's visibility, right? They just can't get a clear, consolidated view across all their locations. Head office tends to be buried in reports, but it still doesn't feel like they have that full picture. And when you don't have a clear picture, head office ends up reacting instead of leading. The second part tends to be consistency, right? Because each unit might be using different systems, they might report in their own way slightly, or they might just track KPIs that don't line up. So comparing performance across the network feels unfair or even impossible for a lot of people as well. That inconsistency makes it feel like comparing apples to oranges, right? It's unfair for franchisees, and it's pretty useless for strategy as well. Now, third to that is the speed, because pulling together all this data across all these locations takes so long that by the time basically that report is ready, the moment to act tends to already have passed, right? We're being reactive rather than proactive. Decisions, they just get delayed, or they're made with the right, without that right data behind them. That just typically means that leaders spend more time chasing numbers than actually acting on them. And that's the reality that I hear from franchise leaders across industries. And it doesn't really matter if it's a gym franchise, cafes, childcare, it is this same story every time. And it's why so many people feel stuck as well. So what's really needed here is the ability to automate performance reporting across every entity, every location, right? That way, head office doesn't spend days just pulling numbers together, and franchisees don't feel like they're just left out of the loop. But automation on its own isn't the full answer, because even when you've automated reporting, there are still challenges that franchise groups need to overcome. When I talk to franchise groups, once we typically identified the core problem, which one of those three that I mentioned earlier, right? The next layer is always the challenge of actually managing it. Now, manual consolidations are still the default for the vast majority of groups out there. Now, they're time-consuming, they're error-prone, and usually depend on someone with a fancy advanced spreadsheet or a custom-built tool. And if that one person is away, or God forbid leaves the business, everything grinds to a halt. And that's when finance stops being a system and starts being this single point of failure. Now, the second challenge is resourcing. Many franchise groups don't typically have large finance teams, so they struggle to build out these consistent reporting frameworks. It's hard to scale insights when you add more locations, or when you're supporting franchisees who may not be as financial savvy. So look, the challenge isn't just about the messy data, right? It's about time, it's about resources, and it's the risk of falling behind as you grow. Now, this is where something like a centralized automated reporting platform changes the game. Instead of every franchisee working in their own spreadsheets or head office spending weeks consolidating, you got one system pulling everything together. That means you get consistent KPI tracking and benchmarking by location or region. It means you get faster and more confident decisions for both franchisees and head office. It also means you have less reliance on fragile spreadsheets or outsourced reports. And importantly, it's something that scales with you as the network grows. So instead of reporting holding you back, it becomes this engine for alignment, accountability, and overall just smarter decisions. So how does Fathom fit into all of this? Well, some of you guys might already be aware of this, but for those that are not, Fathom is an all-in-one platform for business performance reporting, analysis, and cash flow forecasting. What that really means is instead of stitching together spreadsheets or relying on outdated reports, you got one smart solution that combines actionable financial insights, customizable reports for different stakeholders, and business planning tools that scale as you grow. Now, it's built to give both head office and franchisees the same clear, consistent view of performance, and to make decision-making faster, easier, and a lot more confident. Now, just last quarter, I was working with a childcare franchise that had around 40 locations, right? Before Fathom, they were spending 3 weeks every single month consolidating and building out reports for different stakeholders. Now that process is actually fully automated. Reports, they land on day 2, and their operators finally spend their time on decisions instead of spreadsheets. So how does it actually work in practice? Well, Fathom connects directly, right, to your accounting system, whether you're using Xero, whether you're using QuickBooks or MyOb, and it pulls in your data automatically every day. So you don't have to download CSVs or trying to line up reports from different systems. Once the data is in, Fathom then structures it consistently across every entity. That means whether you got 3 gyms or 300 cafes, you're looking at those same KPIs, the same chart of accounts, all speaking the same language. From there, it turns that information into dashboards and reports that are actually easy to understand. Things like revenue by location, margins, cash flow forecasts, all visualized in a way that works for head office, for the board, and even franchisees who aren't finance people. And the best part about it is that it scales, right? Because whether you're adding new locations or you're supporting franchisees who aren't financially savvy, you don't need to rebuild the system every time. It just works in the background. Now, we talked about the problems and the challenges. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like in practice, right? Now, to walk us through that, this idea of how Fathom helps franchise groups, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Sasha, and she'll show you exactly how you can set up consistent reporting, benchmark performance, and share those insights across your network.
My name is Sasha. I'm an account executive here at Fathom, and I'll be walking you through some franchise tips within the product. So let's dive in. Okay, so right now what you're seeing is our insights dashboard. This is where you'll be able to see all of your companies or locations that you've connected. Right away, you're going to see revenue and expenses. However, these columns can be customized in order for you to see the most important metrics for your companies. This is also a one view where you're able to look into which companies are performing on track or off track, and it allows you to kind of know where you need to focus rather than just having to check each individual company at each individual company on its own. Okay, so as you can see, right now I'm diving into a pizza franchise. We can see all the locations here. Now these thresholds can be customized. That's actually located right over here. So in this case, I'm just using my default thresholds. However, you are able to customize these based on the locations. So if maybe the locations that have just opened up are going to have different thresholds than the ones that have been successful for many years, you can customize that here. So if we look here and let's say we say less than 2 years in business, create collection, then we can go ahead and edit this collection. And then as you can see, we can fully customize what it means for the company to be in the red, and of course the amber area, and then the green. We can also see and choose whether we want to use the percentage or the actual value for these thresholds. Now diving back to the main view here, that insights dashboard, not only am I able to customize the columns, I can also create tags for my companies. So with this being said, if I want to see maybe specific regions in one view, like the West Coast or the East Coast, I can go ahead and create a tag. So I can create a tag West, description, next. And then right here, you'll have the opportunity to choose what locations will go into this tag. So for this one, I'll just do some random examples. So we'll go ahead and click create. Awesome. Now, when I go back to look at these tags, right, we'll go to my companies, back to that Insights dashboard, and I go to filter, tags, I have that West tag here, right? So this just allows me to focus in on these companies just to create some comparisons within the region. Okay. Now, besides the Insights dashboard, you're also going to have a My Companies page. This is where you'll be able to see all the locations that are connected. There are 4 parts to Fathom. That includes our settings, forecast reports and analysis. And again, this is Fathom Pro. So within Fathom Pro, not only are you able to look at individual entities, you can actually also create consolidated groups and benchmark groups. So let's go ahead and create a benchmark group together. We'll go ahead and name the group. So this one, I will say example, since I already have one created. And then I'll go ahead and choose a couple of companies to join. Or I can also add all. So maybe let's do all. Terminology, save changes. So next we're going to see segmentation. So this is how you can create categories or subgroups within this benchmark group. So this is where those regions come in, maybe the number of years the location has been open. And again, you can customize this as much as you'd like. And then on top of that, you can also add your key performance indicators and then see how those compare within the benchmark group. In a little bit here, we will go over how to create those KPIs and share them within the companies as well. Down here, we have allow the following user roles to view all metrics in the compare and rank tools. So within Fathom, you'll be able to give permissions to your individual franchise owners as well. We can see who has the full access and can view and edit. Privacy. So see, this is where we can reveal company names or hide the company names. And then logo. Again, totally optional, but if you want to add your franchise's logo over here, this is where that's going to be uploaded. All right, so now we're ready to view the comparison and ranking. So this tool over here will show you how each locations are ranking based on the metrics of choice. Okay, so over here, I have selected to look at total revenue and then highlighting. And right now it's telling me 0 companies. Then I'll go ahead and select all. So as you can see, this really gives me a better idea of what locations are really leading the total revenue. And then of course I can see some of the little guys as well. I can choose what metric I want to look at. So this could be absolutely anything that I've connected to my benchmark group. There we go, another view. And then over here is how you can select the time period you're looking at. So maybe if you want to look at the year of 2024 as well. Over here, we have a ranking tool. So this one really comes in handy as well to kind of see what franchise location or the owner is the leader in a certain category. So I'm going to change this to monthly data. And right now we're just looking at Winston's Pizzeria in Seattle, and then we can see all the categories here. I'm going to go ahead and add the other locations. And as we can see here, this really puts it in perspective of what locations are driving which metric. If I want to here, I can also sort it in alphabetical order, or of course, just go by category. Now, when we create KPIs at an individual entity level or within the consolidated group, we're able to turn on alerts for the KPIs that we want to keep a close eye on, especially if they're performing against the target. So down here, I have an alerts tool that allows me to view all companies or the ones with alerts. In my case, most of my companies have the alerts turned on. And what it means when you see an alert, it's basically saying that the company is not performing against the target for the indicated KPI. So we can see here if there's a trend, right? So obviously here in my operating profit, I'm seeing a trend that most of my locations are not performing on track. And as a franchise owner, this is a really great way to dive in and really see the trends in your businesses and of course, help to find the solution. Okay, let's go back to my company's page. So like I mentioned, each individual company is going to have settings, forecasts, reports, and analysis. Your settings is really where everything starts. That's the foundation you build for Fathom. And then you can share it within each company and use it in a consolidated group. And let's go through and see how we can automate this process and standardize our chart of accounts. So this is where all the financials will be connected. Company profile, this is really for individual reporting. If you want your franchisees to have a logo in their reports, this is where that's going to be added. But most importantly, the chart of accounts. So the chart of accounts right away is going to mirror whatever is going on in the source of the financial data. However, within Fathom, you are able to rearrange the order of accounts as well as create subheadings. So as you can see here, I went ahead and created a subheading alcohol under two of these categories. I guess we should probably add liquor in there. So what I did is I just selected the accounts and then I created a new heading. So this really allows me to standardize this chart of accounts. And as long as this heading also exists in all the other individual locations, it doesn't matter whether the individual accounts line up or not. Similarly here, as you can see, there's a couple of subheadings that I've created. Now, once the chart of accounts looks good to you and you want to reuse it in different locations, you're actually able to copy the settings from one company to another. And then as you can see right here, we can choose what we're copying over. And this really helps to kind of speed up that setup process and of course, standardize that chart of accounts. Okay, now key performance indicators. Although Fathom provides you with a good amount of default KPIs that you are more than welcome to use, we also allow you to create as many of your own KPIs as you'd like. So when we go to add a KPI, you have a couple of options. The first option you have is non-financial KPIs. Now, this is great for especially tracking metrics that are not necessarily just strictly financial, yet still essential to the performance of the business. A good example that we're doing here in a pizza franchise is we're tracking the number of customers, we're tracking the number of transactions, we're tracking the number of specific purchases just to see what is the most popular right along the whole franchise or what is the most popular within a region to really spot those trends early on. So if we want to create that non-financial KPI, we'll just follow these steps. So all you have to do is you name it. You can add a description if you'd like, unit of measure. You can create your own unit if it's unique to your business as well. Decimal places, aggregation type. Another one that's really important to pay attention to is the target type. Overall, for your business, would you like to see a greater or lower number of the specific custom KPI that you're creating? Down here, when you create any KPI, you always have the option to add this to your KPI library. Now, this library is shared within all of your entities, which means once you create this KPI once, you don't have to recreate it, which is really great, saving you time and also just tracking the categories of these KPIs as well. So once you create this KPI, this window is going to disappear, and you'll actually want to go over here where it says non-financial KPI results. Right away, you're going to see all the non-financial KPIs you've created, and of course, the data over here. Now, how do we enter this data? You have a couple of options. We can manually enter this into Fathom just by simply typing into the cell, or these results can actually be imported. So of course we have an option of an Excel upload. In this case, you are able to download the template, add on to it if it already has pre-existing data, or once you create a new non-financial KPI, that will be included in the Excel as well. Or one of our most automated ways to do this is to create a Google Sheet connection. In this case, that's what I've done here. That's the little light and bold that you see. So as soon as this data gets added to my Google Sheet that I've connected, it automatically gets connected to your Fathom account as well. Okay, now we went over creating a non-financial KPI. We can also create an account watch KPI, which allows you to track a single account or category from the chart of accounts that we've connected, or formula KPIs. These formula KPIs, you can use any metrics that you've connected to Fathom, whether they're coming from your financials or non-financials, and then of course setting up your own values to get the most out of Fathom KPIs. And again, everything can be added to the KPI library. Over here, as you can see, I have categories for KPIs. These can also be renamed and customized to your business. And again, these settings can be copied over from one company to another to save you time while you're setting up. You are also going to see this importance column. This is really for you to go through and determine how important are these KPIs to the businesses. By doing that in Fathom, you're able to see visual representations of these KPIs that categorizes them not only by the categories, but also by the levels of their importance. Last but not least, you're also able to set targets for these KPIs. They can be constant, or these targets, you're able to change them as well, such as applying a trend and so on. Awesome. So we went over the benchmark group, but you are also able to create consolidated groups to get the totals for your reporting, or if you want to break it down by each location as well as seeing the totals. So when we go to consolidated group, you really have the flexibility of what you want this to look like. You can create different groups for different regions or business sizes and so on. So similar to the benchmark group, we're just going to name it, and then we're going to select the entities that we would like to be within this group. From there, I already have a consolidation created. So again, we're just going to start with the settings, as that is really the foundation. Diving in, similarly, we can also add a logo to our consolidated reporting. Now, chart of accounts. This chart of accounts is also customizable. As you can see, it has the same categories that we've seen within the individual companies. It's also really easy to eliminate specific accounts from specific companies or locations by simply clicking the eliminate in Fathom. Okay, so now let's dive into our analysis tools. So these analysis tools look really similar as they do at an individual level. Because these companies are also part of a benchmark group, we can see the percentile they are within each KPI. Actually, no, I'm sorry, scratch that. So within a consolidated group, we're able to see all the KPIs, and then we can see how these KPIs are tracking, right? So we can really see the median, and then we can also see the percentile here. And again, as a franchise owner, this is really a great way to see how the companies are doing as a whole and how they're trending. Another tool we have is a breakdown tool. So this allows you to select a metric of your choice, and then you can break it down by each location. You can sort it by result or again alphabetical, and then we can add a comparative. So in this case, we're looking at the last month comparison added here, or we can also do same month last year or no comparison at all. And then again, within the consolidated group, we also have our compare and rank tools. Okay, now let's look at our reports. So here in Fathom, we actually provide you with a good number of predefined templates that you can use within any of your entities. However, on top of that, you are able to create your own templates and actually share them within each group. So if I want to create a report, let's say this one is going to be from scratch. I'm just going to call this one an example. We'll create it. And all I'm going to add to this one is simply an income statement total for the month. And then I'm also going to add financials broken down by company. And there it is. Here, let's change the date. Okay, so now I created this very simple report. However, maybe this is all I need for this template. I just want it to be a simple breakdown of financials by each entity with the total and then just the total. Now, when I go back, this is saved in real time. So we can see when it was last edited. And then under actions, I can go ahead and save this as a template. So example, create template. Now, when I go to look at my custom templates, I'm able to copy this template to another company. So as you can see here, I can just go ahead and copy the template. And then now I'm able to share this within all the franchisees, as well as the consolidated level. So if you want to come up with a standard monthly report or a quarterly report that you would like each location to use, this is a great way to do that. And then you can just go ahead and send out the template that can be used. Real quick, I want to show you an example of a monthly franchise report that I've created. So we can go to create report, use a template, next, and then we're going to go look at monthly performance report. So as we can see here, I've uploaded our logo and a background image as well, total revenue, number of customers. And then really this report, not only does it incorporate the financial data, I'm also using all the non-financial KPIs that I've connected. So we can see all the breakdowns. And then here's that chart. So pretty much anything that you see within our analysis tools, you can also include in your report. So especially as a franchise owner, this is really helpful to see the breakdowns by each location as well as the totals. Let me dive into financials. So as you can see here, I've included an average rate per guest as well. So although this is a non-financial KPI, this is still something I'm tracking within my consolidated reports. Now, once I have a report I like and I want it to be generated on its own, I'm able to go to schedules, create schedule. Then I can choose where I want this report to live. The only difference really is drafted reports can be edited in real time. Published reports are frozen in time. However, it can always be reverted back and forth. So my recommendation is if you want to add some custom text, maybe at the end of each month or quarter, you'd want it to live in drafted. But if the report is good to go, there's nothing that you want to customize further, you can always just go ahead and put it in the published reports. Then we will choose a template. So we'll go with monthly franchise report. Next, we will choose the frequency. So in this case, it's a monthly report. And maybe the standard for our location is 2 weeks after the end of the month. We really want them to close their books and finalize those. So that is why I'm going to have this report generate, maybe let's say 15 days after the end of every month, to give all the individual owners enough time to enter their financials. Now I can also choose the group of individuals that I want to be notified. Again, that is fully customizable, and you can customize who from your leadership maybe would want to see the consolidated report. And then of course the individual reports will be sent out to you and the franchise owners as well, or however you'd like to set it up. From there, I'll just say create. And as we can see all the schedules here. We can see their status and the next issue date. These can also always be activated and deactivated. And yeah, your schedule is ready and you can see the next issue date. Great. Well, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and hopefully Fathom can be the solution for your franchise.
Okay. Look, hopefully that was helpful to a lot of you guys as well, just to be able to actually kind of see in the platform how this works in real life. Now, I just want to take a quick step back here and just kind of recap what we just saw. So look, at its core, Fathom gives franchise groups 3 big wins, right? First, it's this idea of a simple way to reconcile chart of accounts and share KPIs across the group. Secondly, you have this ability to benchmark entities and location, right? So like I said, whether that's by location, region, by owner, so that everyone's got that sort of fair and consistent view of how they're stacking up. Now, thirdly, you get streamlined reporting and sharing so that those performance insights don't just live at the head office. They flow right through to your franchisees. Now, that is really the shift here, right? Moving from scattered manual reporting to just one system where everything is, not everything, but everyone is looking at the same numbers, right? With that same level of clarity and actually using them. Now, look, that is kind of a wrap on the main content for today, right? And I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for sticking with me. Now, I would love to open it up again for those questions that you might have. So I've seen a few questions come in the Q&A box as the webinar has been going through, but feel free to post them if you've kind of been sitting on them until now. Now, that can be questions about Fathom itself, how other franchise groups are using it, or even challenges that you're seeing in your own reporting. Now, I also wanted to mention to the people on here today that currently aren't using Fathom on a day-to-day, if you'd like to do a bit of a deeper dive we do offer a 14-day free trial period. You can just jump onto our website, fathom.com. You'll see a green button in the top right corner, and you'll be able to sign up for that 14-day free trial. The beauty of that 14-day free trial is that it is actually the full product that you get access to, right? So you can pull in some of those franchisees' numbers, you can set things up so that you can look at how Fathom would work in your specific use case with your specific numbers as well. So let's see if we got any sort of questions here. So the first one I got here was basically a question around the insights dashboard that Sasha was showing at the beginning of her demonstration there. Now, is there a way of incorporating that insights dashboard in another report that I have designed? At the moment, if you click on download, you get the Excel version, but not the view. So the insight dashboard is a great visualization tool, and I understand why you would want it in your report. Right now, currently, there is not a way to get the exact sort of format of that insights dashboard into a report. What I can say is that the insight dashboard is basically part of a fairly new feature of Fathom, this whole idea of a portfolio company. Now, because it's quite new, we are continuously making developments on it. And I do know that this idea of being able to take that view that you're referencing and putting it into, say, a standard report or a benchmarking report is definitely on the cards. So while it's not available just yet, yeah, you should be looking at getting that fairly soon as well. Do you have any module to have reporting P&L, KPI project-wise of the same company with some common cost allocation methodology? So yes, I think I understand what you mean. So if basically what you're saying is that within a single entity, you would have multiple projects, or I think a lot of sort of these accounting systems call them tracking categories, right? I believe in Maya, they might be called jobs, but it is this idea of essentially a subset of data that some might use for divisions, some might use them for projects, departments, locations, but it's all kind of in this same accounting file. Now, Fathom does support that, so that if you do have, say, 10 file with 60 locations set up as tracking categories, you can basically do, well, exactly what Sasha just showed you, just on the project level. There's kind of two ways to it. One is that you can just import that single entity, and you can add those tracking categories as subsets of data. And that would allow you to, say, create a report where you take a P&L and you filter it by that individual project. Or you create a KPI table and you filter it down to that specific project. Now, there are also ways in Fathom where we can pull in these projects as essentially their own entities. And that would allow you to then take those projects, put them into those benchmarking groups that Sasha explained, putting or consolidating them up to different regions, for example. So kind of two different ways to look at it, but yeah, definitely something that we do support. Now, I did also get a question here, and I'm assuming this would probably be around the non-financial KPI side. So will the data from the Google Sheet be updated in real time? Not necessarily real time, but every 24 hours. So the same kind of frequency that Fathom updates the financial data is when it will automatically update that Google Sheet data. Now, obviously, if it was 12 p.m. on a Friday, you did some changes in that Google Sheet and you needed to see it reflected immediately because you're pushing that report out by 4 p.m., then 100% you are able to update it manually as well, right? Click of a button and it syncs directly from that Google Sheet. So the automatic update is 24 hours, but you do have that ability to do a manual update whenever you need to as well. That seems to be the end of the questions for now. So look, I'm more than happy to I'm going to do a little bit of a quick outro here. If a few more questions come in, I'm more than happy to tackle them. Alternatively, you guys are always welcome to reach out. A good way to sort of get in touch with myself and the team here at Fathom is if you jump onto our website, you'll see one of these little chat boxes in the bottom right corner. If you click on that, you'll be directed to one of our team members. And they can set you up by just sort of answering some simple queries you may have. If you want to get connected to someone from my team and have a bit of a demonstration or talk through specifically your use case, the challenges you're seeing, and whether Fathom can help with those, then 100%. Jump onto our website, little sort of circle widget in the bottom right corner, and it allows you to chat with the team directly. Okay, Look, just because we're not getting any more questions, I think we'll leave it there for today. So look, again, thanks so much for your time, guys. I know reporting isn't always the most exciting thing on the calendar, but it really does make such a difference when you get it right. So hopefully you're walking away with some practical ideas on how to make franchise reporting easier and how actually get franchisees engaged with the numbers, because that's such a big deal of it. If you can get franchisees engaged with the financial side of things, you'll have such an easier time running things from the head office as well. Plenty of groups that I've worked with have started on this sort of free trial that I mentioned just to test it out. And within 2 weeks, it was a bit of a no-brainer. So if you want to explore how Fathom can help with that, like I said, jump onto fathom.com, jump on a trial, and test it out for yourself. That way you can see it with your own data and get a feel for whether it's a fit. Appreciate your time, guys. Thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk again soon. See ya.